Welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Today, the U.S. got a new combatant command, which is a military unit dedicated to a particular mission. President Trump announced the establishment of the Space Force Command during a Rose Garden event, marking the 11th combatant command.
SpaceCom will defend America's vital interests in space, the next warfighting domain.
The new command will include personnel from all branches of the military. Part of the reason it was created was to protect U.S. satellites, which are used for military and civilian purposes.
Our freedom to operate in space is also essential to detecting and destroying any missile launched against the United States.
Air Force General Jay Raymond will lead the new command. This is one of a number of steps the Defense Department says will lay the foundation for the establishment of a Space Force, a sixth branch of the U.S. Armed Forces.
Dorian is headed for Florida and expected to be a major hurricane come Friday afternoon, then grow in strength.
Hurricane Dorian is expected to strengthen to a Category 4 before making landfall along the east coast of Florida by Monday. Across the region, residents are preparing for the worst and rushing to load up on water, food, and emergency supplies. People are stocking up on gas to help them get out of the path of the hurricane. Some commercial flights were canceled on Thursday. The Kennedy Space Center will move its mobile launch pad out of Dorian's path. A state of emergency has been declared in Florida, as authorities warn residents to take precautions.
All Floridians really need to monitor Hurricane Dorian and make the necessary preparation.
President Trump says during an interview on Fox News Radio that Florida will be ready for Dorian.
We were ready at Puerto Rico, and we're very ready also in Florida.
The U.S. Coast Guard issued safety advisories and warned people eager to celebrate the Labor Day holiday to steer clear of the beaches. Video footage shot on Wednesday shows Hurricane Dorian hitting the U.S. Virgin Islands. Heavy rain caused water to cascade through St. Thomas as driving winds battered trees. NTD News.
And Donald Trump says he is canceling his trip to Poland this week with the news of Dorian, but that Vice President Mike Pence will attend instead. And on to the next story. The Environmental Protection Agency has proposed amending Obama-era requirements in the gas and oil industry, which it says will remove costly regulations on methane emissions. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more.
A rule enacted under then-President Barack Obama continues to regulate methane leaks in the oil industry, but the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, has proposed removing the rule, saying it would save the industry $17 to $19 million a year. This is in response to President Trump's executive order in 2017, which requires federal agencies to reevaluate existing regulations and to rescind unnecessarily burdensome rules. EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler was quoted in the press release saying that since 1990, the natural gas industry has more than doubled, yet methane emissions across the gas industry fell 15%. Our regulations should not stifle this innovation and progress. Critics of the proposal are considering this a blow to climate change since methane is more efficient at trapping radiation than carbon dioxide. However, emissions from volatile organic compounds which produce smog would continue to be regulated under the proposal. A hearing on the proposed updates will be held in October. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
U.S. federal health officials are issuing a national warning against marijuana use by adolescents and pregnant women. Their announcement comes as over 30 states have legalized marijuana for medical or personal use.
On Thursday, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar and Surgeon General Jerome Adams warned of trends showing pregnant women and young people are more likely to use the drug and less likely to recognize the risks.
For many, it can be addictive, and it's especially dangerous for adolescents and pregnant women because of what we know about how it affects the developing brain.
Adams said marijuana today is far more potent than it used to be.
Well, the science tells us the higher the THC delivery, the higher the risk. We've seen an increase in emergency department visits for psychosis, overdose, and accidental ingestions.
The officials noted that while state laws have changed and are legalizing marijuana, federal law hasn't. The FDA has not approved any form of marijuana for medical use. They recommend bringing any questions to a trusted healthcare provider and encourage healthcare providers to get fully informed on the risks and other safety issues.
A Department of Justice watchdog says former FBI Director James Comey violated multiple agency policies by leaking classified information to the media after he was fired by President Trump in 2017.
The Department of Justice, or DOJ, said it would not prosecute, but Inspector General Michael Horowitz continued to investigate whether Comey's retention, handling, and dissemination of certain memos violated DOJ and FBI policies, which he says it did. Days after Trump fired Comey in 2017, Comey leaked a memo, a written record of a conversation he had with Trump, to the New York Times. Comey says the leak was an attempt to force a special counsel investigation. Horowitz delivered a scathing rebuke to Comey in the conclusion of the report. While the memo did not contain classified material, Comey set a dangerous example when he shared sensitive information to create public pressure for official action.
A judge has ordered the sex trafficking charges against the late financier Jeffrey Epstein to be dropped. The case was expected to be dismissed after Epstein was found dead in a New York prison on August 10th, but U.S. District Judge Richard Berman allowed it to continue so that Epstein's accusers could testify in court. Over a dozen women spoke on Tuesday about the alleged sexual abuse they experienced. And the story isn't over yet. U.S. Attorney General William Barr said that the investigation into Epstein's co-conspirators would continue. President Trump says he is going to withdraw thousands of U.S. forces from Iran. On Thursday, he told Fox News Radio that after the withdrawal, he plans to keep 8,600 troops there.
The U.S. now has about 14,000 service members in Afghanistan. They are conducting counterterrorism operations as well as training and advising Afghan troops.
We're reducing that presence very substantially, and we're going to always have a presence. We're going to have high intelligence.
The withdrawal would be in conjunction with a U.S. Taliban peace plan that President Trump is considering. On Monday, he said he had no timeline for it.
And we are working along with the Taliban, with the government, and other people too. And we'll see what happens. No timeline. Okay?
Top military officials say an agreement with the Taliban would have to ensure that Afghanistan does not become a haven for extremists.
And we will come back with a force like they've never seen before. So we have to watch Afghanistan, but we're bringing it down.
MSNBC host Lawrence O'Donnell saying last night that he used unverified information on air about President Donald Trump's finances. This comes after the president's lawyers issued a notice to NBC Universal. O'Donnell said it was wrong to discuss the report on air, which he says used only a single source. He apologized for airing something that he says wasn't ready for broadcast and acknowledged that isn't good enough. He also formally retracted the story about loans that President Trump received, but only after the president's lawyer sent a letter to NBC calling O'Donnell's claims false, defamatory, and extremely damaging. The letter demanded that O'Donnell and NBCU immediately and prominently retract, correct, and apologize within 24 hours. California's homelessness problem is an ongoing issue. 2 mayoral candidates, one current and one former, say it's due to some of the city's policies. NTD's Eileen Eng has more on their ideas for improvement.
11 more. This is only one of the corners.
This is the heart of the Tenderloin District, one of the areas with the highest population of homeless. Richie Greenberg, who ran for mayor last year, said the homeless situation in the city has worsened.
Some of them are the most severe, mentally ill, chronic, out on the streets. Overnight, they sleep in alleyways, they sleep in storefronts, in cardboard boxes. This is the most unfortunate.
Ellen Lee Joe, who is running for San Francisco mayor this year, says that if she is elected, she would address the homeless problem by getting rid of illegal drugs.
They're just regular people. Regular people have home, regular people have job until they get messing up with their mind by taking drugs. That's right. In order to solve the homeless problem, eliminate illegal drugs. To start.
Jo says she would prevent the city from giving out free needles to drug users. She believes this is part of the reason why the city has deteriorated over the years. Instead of calling for more resources for the homeless, she's advocating the opposite.
The more money we spend on homeless in San Francisco, we attract a lot of new non-San Franciscans.
Most of them specifically to take advantage of a generous, liberal government and nonprofit outreach organizations.
Provided by Salvation Army. They are here 3 times a week. This on broad daylight right here in front of the market. You do not have to pay a thing. It's all free. Free coffee, free drinks.
Formerly homeless, James came from Florida for such benefits. He now works in the city.
Basically, they pay for the rent, and then I get $200 on top of that. So let's say 200 in EBT, 200 cash, and a place to live. So they literally pay me to be here.
But he doesn't see that as a good thing. He said it also attracted people who were violent.
It's a traumatic experience just being here. Because almost every day, there's people hurting people. People have threatened my life. Now I have to carry a weapon. It's just dangerous. That's why I want to get out of here.
According to Greenberg, there are many homeless outreach organizations raising money to help the homeless, but some haven't been very effective. The biggest problem, he says, is a lack of accountability.
We need to know how it's being spent, who's getting it, and how effective is their program. If any of those organizations and nonprofits are basically ineffective, we need to cut off the funds. Why are we giving these organizations any money at all?
They encourage people to be more aware of the issues to better understand how they can help fix their city. Eileen Ng, NTD News, San Francisco.
And New York, one of the only states with rent control, may be facing some unintended consequences. NTD's Penny Zhou spoke with stakeholders in the state to learn more.
Fed up, major landlords consider exiting New York. In this recent piece by Crain's Business magazine, sources were quoted as saying that some of New York's most prolific builders are leaving Manhattan and turning to other markets such as Colorado, Utah, and Florida, due to New York's climbing tax rates and increasing regulations. The state of New York passed its most recent rent regulations in June. The laws are called by many the strongest tenant protections ever, but have also drawn criticism and even a lawsuit against it.
They make sure that rent-stabilized tenants get to stay in their apartments.
New York real estate lawyer Samuel Goldberg said the new laws have made it very hard for landlords of rent-regulated apartments to raise too much rent or go back to free markets. There are nearly 1 million rent-stabilized apartments in New York. These landlords can only raise the rent by an amount set by the government. But if they push the rent above the $27.75 ceiling through other avenues, like renovating the apartment will no longer be subject to this control, which is exactly what many landlords are doing.
The landlord felt they can raise the rent to $6,000, they would be able to do that because it would be free market. Now, the way it is it doesn't matter if the rent went above $27.75. It's still a rent-stabilized apartment because it was rent-stabilized then.
New York is the second in the country to enforce statewide rent control. The state of Oregon also passed a rent cap earlier this year. Similar rent controls also exist in some local governments in California and Maryland, but no elsewhere in the country.
The new law does not incentivize landlords or developers coming here as much as it used to.
In July, a group of landlords filed a federal lawsuit in New York, saying the rent laws violate the 5th and 14th Amendments in the Constitution. They say the government has no right to direct how owners use their private property. The lawyers say it could take 1 or 2 years for any results to show. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
The Amazon forest is burning. Let's take a good look at the situation on the ground.
Dusk isn't when you rest as the Amazon burns. It's when the day cools enough to give firefighters a chance. Everything we see in a bumpy hour's drive to nowhere turned to ashes in the last 4 days. This is how. A war that marches across the bush and into the trees when it can. Destruction that overshadows an entire branch of our species here. The Tenharim are an indigenous community, 1,000 strong, who say they legally own nearly 1 million hectares nearby. The next generation will have a darker future, he says. Since this president came to power, these things are happening a lot more. President Jair Bolsonaro is keen to bring what he calls progress to the Amazon, even pushing to let these areas be commercially farmed for the first time. The raging fires, all of which here have burned since he pledged to send 43,000 troops, clear land for farming too. The sun rises again on a little bit less of this marvel. The Tenharin didn't want to be part of our world, but now it wants part of them. All around are signs of what's fueling the inferno. Land cleared for cattle, so we can eat more beef. Logging and deforestation to enable crops like soy to grow line the busy roads. The firefighters that tackle the blaze here are 3 hours' drive from the nearest village. This is the land we flew over 4 days before, but the devastation is more final from the ground. Fires do occur naturally in the brush, like Bolsonaro says, but it was startling how nearly every policeman, firefighter or official we spoke to said very many are caused deliberately. To clear land, to farm, to alleviate poverty, or just make the rich richer. Yet they don't have the water here to put the fire out, only stop its spread. Damage limitation only, with the most basic tools on the front line of this global environmental crisis.
Now to Hong Kong, where China's military deployed fresh troops on Thursday in what it is calling a routine rotation. This comes amid speculation that Beijing might try to intervene in ongoing pro-democracy protests there.
Speaking at a press conference on Thursday, former Hong Kong student leaders joined with pro-democracy protesters in warning the one. China's state-run CCTV said the troops left Shenzhen on Wednesday evening. It said this is the 22nd rotation of the People's Liberation Army's Hong Kong garrison. However, a Hong Kong lawmaker said he didn't think the troop rotation was routine. He said given the timing, it seems it was meant to intimidate protesters. A PLA officer said the soldiers being moved there are being taught Hong Kong's laws and will aid in maintaining order there. This comes as large demonstrations are planned for Saturday, and Hong Kong nears its third month of large-scale protests. Police have banned Saturday's event, citing safety concerns. Beijing has denounced the protests and made clear that forceful intervention is possible. Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam has also not ruled out the possibility of invoking emergency powers to quell the protests. NTD News.
More on Hong Kong. As concerns about a possible military crackdown intensify, the Hong Kong Internet Service Providers Association is speaking out. On Wednesday, it said it was troubled by reports that the government might issue an executive order to block selective websites and applications. In a statement, the association said such an order would be the end of the open internet of Hong Kong, and that it would ruin the uniqueness and value of Hong Kong as a telecommunications hub and international financial center. The association has requested that the government consult industry players before imposing any restrictions. Unlike mainland China, where the internet is filtered through China's firewall, Hong Kong's internet is an open network. And in Britain, a petition opposing Prime Minister Boris Johnson's decision to effectively suspend Parliament in the run-up to the planned Brexit date gained more than 1 million signatures in less than 24 hours. The petition on the British Parliament's website reached nearly 1,450,000 signatures, exceeding the threshold of 100,000, which triggers parliamentary debate. A YouGov opinion poll published Wednesday showed Britons opposed Johnson's plan to suspend Parliament by a margin of 47% to 27%, with 26% of the nearly 6,000 adults surveyed not expressing any view. And on the ground, our reporter in London spoke with a business owner to find out how Brexit could impact them.
Chances are you've heard the words "no deal Brexit" floating around. The head of the EU Council recently had this to say.
One thing I will not cooperate on is no deal. And I still hope that Prime Minister Johnson will not like to go down in history as Mr. No Deal.
As we know, the Queen approved Prime Minister Boris Johnson to suspend Parliament for 5 weeks before the Brexit deadline. This will give MPs less time to vote and debate Brexit, including passing legislation to stop a no deal. So what could a no deal Brexit mean for businesses in the UK?
And that means we leave the EU's legal order in one day.
Sietske de Groot advises businesses on how to prepare for Brexit. She made a series of Brexit maps as a visual aid.
Every sector will have to look at its regulations.
Some businesses are stockpiling or considering moving their offices abroad. These Dutch twin sisters run their drinks company Double Dutch in London. I asked them how they've been impacted by the Brexit vote.
I think for us, our biggest concern is that the UK becomes a country that is less attractive to do business with.
The company, which has 18 employees, is holding stock for twice as long as usual, 12 to 15 weeks. They are planning to move half of their production from Northern Ireland to Belgium.
It's just too much of a risk to have everything here in the UK while we export to 25 other countries as well. So it just makes sense to have it separately. So we produce here in the UK for a domestic market, and then we produce in mainland Europe for export markets.
If there's a no-deal Brexit, she said they would need to hire someone to manage their relations between the UK and EU countries and possibly have a subsidiary company in the Netherlands to manage their operations to export markets.
It's not going to affect our sales or it's not going to affect our business. It's just extra hassle and extra time and management that goes into it, and we can prepare to the best level that we can.
It's hard to predict what will unfold next, but at least now the company is growing and business is good. Jane Werrell, NTD News.
The art of Zhenshan Ren is back at Toronto City Hall. The name means truth, compassion, and tolerance in Chinese, the main tenets of a spiritual practice from China that inspired the art.
So it's both an honor and a pleasure to help launch the Art of Zhenshan Ren International exhibition here at Toronto City Hall. And it is only fitting that an exhibition of this nature take place in a democratic chamber that governs Canada's largest city.
The classical paintings show the beauty of Falun Dafa, also called Falun Gong, a meditation and Qigong practice that was introduced to the public in 1992. The Chinese government at one point estimated there were over 70 million practicing it in China alone.
I'm very impressed with the paintings and their artistic value, but I think more important is the spiritual significance of what they're trying to tell us. And I think that is what needs to guide us.
Due to Falun Gong's popularity and the Chinese Communist Party's tight control on religion, Falun Gong practitioners have been persecuted in China since 1999. One of the themes of the exhibition is the persecution, including the killing of Falun Gong practitioners for their organs.
A responsibility to help those that do not enjoy the same freedoms. And that includes millions, yes, millions of Falun Gong practitioners who are oppressed by the Chinese government.
The art of Zhenshan Ren was founded in 2003 and has since been exhibited all around the world. NTD News, Toronto.
And in South Africa, a master taxidermist helping to preserve wildlife carcasses for 50 years with a specialty in big cats.
Working on up to 2,500 animals per year for both local and international clients, Rodney Kretschmar's methods are unique. He follows his father's technique for creating lifelike lion models with realistic expressions. Despite the industry being worth $39 million per year, Kretschmar has had his share of problems.
Because of the illegal hunting, the problems we have with rhino and elephant poaching, etc., it's created a worldwide environment which is now hitting us with such tremendous restrictions that we cannot freely do our work.
Because of the illegal poaching, Kretschmar has watched other local taxidermy studios close, and he's often relied on return clients in the past. Now he says business is finally picking up for the first time in years.
And that's all for today's NTD News. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.